Good morning, everybody. My name is Barbara Montagna and I'm the Immigration Compliance Officer at Bournemouth University. And today's webinar is guidance for agents about your students applying for a Tier 4 student visa. So during this webinar, this is what I'm going to cover. What institutions need to consider before we assign a CAS to offer holders. What information you need to know about the CAS, the confirmation of acceptance for studies, the documents that are required by students to make their application, how much money, the maintenance they need to show, a little bit of information about credibility interviews, the application process including the immigration health surcharge and TB screening. If you have any students that will be studying at the Bournemouth International College, a little bit of information about the immigration information that you can give and the immigration advice that we give. And then I've got a list of other questions that agents have asked about, and I will cover those briefly because they don't come into these main sections. So the first thing is the Tier 4 visa requirements. For students to apply for a Tier 4 visa, they need to earn 40 points. They earn 30 points by having a valid CAS. So that means that they have their CAS with their CAS number, and they also need to have the original documents that are noted on their CAS. So the qualifications that have been noted on their CAS. And I will explain a little bit more about how students find out which documents they are later in the webinar. Then the other 10 points is from maintenance, and that is showing that they have enough money to cover their monthly living expenses, which the Home Office calls maintenance, and any outstanding course fees for their course. So I'm going to talk now about the documents that students are required to have to make a valid application. They have to have a current valid passport. If they are applying from within the UK, they need to have and to submit their current UK Tier 4 visa. They also have to have photographs. So this is from one of my previous advisors. The photograph requirements are very strict, more so if they're applying within the UK. They have to be serious, a plain background, nothing covering their face. And the dimensions that are required are on this slide as well, and then they need to write their name on the back of the photographs. Other documents, apart from the main ones that students have needed to provide in the past, are evidence of a change of name. So if any of the documents they're providing have a different name than the one that they're using to make their application for their visa, they need to provide evidence of that change of name. And also, if students have been in the UK or applying from the UK and they require a police registration certificate, they must make sure before they make their Tier 4 application that the certificate is up to date with their current address and details of their current visa, and they must submit that with their application as well. So that's if they're making their application from within the UK. As I said, when you have a look at the CAS statement, which I'll show you an example of one later, we note which certificates the student needs to submit. The students must meet these requirements when they are submitting their certificates. So they must have the student's name, the title of the award, the date of the award, and the name of the awarding institution. Students have to send originals, not copies. And if the document is not in English, the student has to submit the original document in their own language and also the official English translation. And I'm going to talk a bit more about translations later. So the next thing is the maintenance, or the funds, the money that they must have available. So for new students, they must provide evidence to show that they have £9,135 for maintenance, plus any BU course fees that have not already been paid. The figure, 9,135, is a figure that the Home Office have created based on a very complicated formula. But that is the amount of money that all new students starting a new course will need to show that they have available in their bank account. So an example for how much money your students will need to show in their bank account if they're using bank statements is that if the course fees for the university are £15,000, and when they make their visa application, the students already paid their £2,000 deposit, the student has £13,000 outstanding course fees plus the £9,135 maintenance, so they will be required to show £22,135 in their bank statements or other financial evidence. So these are the requirements for the financial documents. To evidence their money, they can use 4 different documents. One is a bank statement or bank letter. The other one is an official sponsorship letter. The other is a Chinese certificate of deposit. For Chinese nationals, this is acceptable. Or evidence of an educational loan, for example, for US students, a US federal loan. Specifically for bank statements or bank letters, the money must be in cash funds and not in frozen accounts. Students can only use their own or their parent or legal guardian's bank account. They can't use the account of any other relatives. The funds must be in the financial account for at least 28 days before they make their application, and students can use overseas or UK bank accounts, and they can also use more than one bank account to evidence they have the correct amount of money available. So bank statements and bank letters, these is other important information that students need to know. The most recent date that the student used the funds, so a transaction, if it's a bank statement, must be no longer than 31 days before they make their visa application. So if a student has had the correct money in their bank for more than 28 days, but in the last month they haven't made any transactions, they need to make a transaction, because the Home Office will look at the last transaction as the most recent date, not the date that the bank statement has been created or printed. The financial document must include the student's name, their account number, the date the financial document was created, and it must have the institution's name and logo for a bank, and the amount of money that is available to them. If from within the UK, students are using bank statements that they've printed from internet banking, then they need to go into the bank with their statements and get each page stamped by the bank, even if there are no transactions on any of the pages. So I said that students are able to use their parent or legal guardian's bank statements to show their funds. If a student is going to use a mother or a father's bank account, in addition to their bank statement or bank letter, they must also provide a consent letter from their parent giving consent for the money that's in their account to be used for their son or daughter's fees. The student must provide their original birth certificate, and if that's not in English, that must also be officially translated. Lots of students ask, what does the consent letter need to look like? So we've put together this very brief template letter that students can use, that they can complete and then send to their parents to sign. So this meets all of the requirements of the parental consent letter. So please feel free to share this with your students if you think it will help them. If they are using another financial sponsor, there are only certain sponsors that they can use that the UKVI, the Home Office, will recognise. So it's overseas government sponsorship, UK government, the British Council, or another international organisation or international company or organisation or university. So if they want to be sponsored by a company from their home country, it has to be a company that has branches in more than one country to make it an international company. The letter from the financial sponsor must include the student's name, the name and contact details of the sponsor. There must be a date on the letter, the length of the sponsorship, so if the course is for 4 years, that they agree to sponsor them for 4 years, for example, and also the amount of money or a statement that they will cover all of the fees and living expenses. So it must either say how much money they are sponsoring the student for, or a statement to say that it will be covering all course fees and all living costs or maintenance. Again, if the financial sponsor has not had to issue financial sponsorship letters before, students can provide this as an example letter for the sponsor to use. So the next way that students can show that they have enough money is having a scholarship or an educational loan. If a student has one of these, they do not need to show that the money has been available to them for the 28 days. which is a requirement if they're showing bank statements. If the students receive a BU scholarship, we will write this on the CAS statement, and that is all the information that they'll need. That will be the evidence that's required. If they have an external scholarship, so one that they've not received from BU, they will need to provide evidence of this scholarship on official paper with their visa application. If you have a US student and we have certified their US federal loan, they need to provide evidence of the loan with their visa application. And once we've certified their loan, we will post a letter to the student that they can use as evidence with their visa application. If the scholarship or educational loan does not cover all of the course fees and all of the living expenses, the student will need to provide additional evidence, usually bank statements, for 28 days to show that they have the rest of the required funds. So for example, if a scholarship covers just course fees, the student would also then need to provide bank statements to show that they have the £9,135 available to them for 28 days. Credibility interviews. So it's very possible that students will be interviewed as part of their application to confirm that they are a genuine student. So this is in addition to having to have a valid CAS, the required documents and the required amount of money. The Home Office may interview the student so that they are satisfied that the student is genuinely coming to the UK for the purpose of study and that they have researched and they know which course they're going to do and why. They should prepare fully by researching BU, what courses they have to offer and how the course that they choose will help their future career plans. The students must be sure that they are fitting well and that they understand the questions during the interview. If they start to feel unwell or they don't understand any of the questions, they must let the entry clearance officer, that's the person doing the interview, know, or ask for clarification if they don't understand a question. Students are advised that they must be honest and clear in terms of their intentions and their study plans. Students shouldn't be coached to do the credibility interview, but we do have some further guidance on the types of questions that they may be asked during a credibility interview at this link. Throughout this webinar there are links and these are all hyperlinks that you can click on to find the information that I'm speaking about. So I said that the documents, if any of them aren't in English or Welsh, they need to be officially translated. The translation must include details of the translation company, so a student cannot do the translation themselves. Confirmation, and it must be stated that this is an accurate translation of the original document. The document must be dated, and the original signature of the translator or an authorized official of the company must appear on the translation document. So now I'm going to speak about the Confirmation of Acceptance for Studies, the CAS document. We will start to create CASs for our students who have unconditional offers at the end of June this year, 2017, as students are not allowed to make a visa application until 3 months before their course starts. So for us to create and send the applicant their CAS, which will be in the form of an email, they must have an unconditional offer that they have accepted, and if it is required, they must have paid a deposit for their course. And students should receive their CAS within 5 working days of meeting these conditions. So when we start to do the CASs at the end of June, any student who already have met this condition, their offer is unconditional, there's nothing more they need to provide to us, and if required they've paid their deposit, we will be creating their CASs and sending it to them. After this date, once a student meets the requirements, they will have their CAS sent within 5 working days. In preparation for this, it would be very helpful if students haven't already done so for them to upload on their application hub for BU a copy of their current valid passport, because that's one thing that we require before we create the CAS. A lot of the questions I receive from students and agents is about visa refusals. If the student's visa application is refused, the first thing that they need to do, or you can do for them, is to send us their refusal notice as soon as possible. There are 2 reasons for this. The first is that part of our requirements is that we report any refusals to the Home Office, So we rely on the student or the agent to let us know this. If the reason for the refusal was because of financial documents that didn't meet the requirements, the students will only receive a new CAS once they've sent us new financial evidence so that we can see that they do now meet the Tier 4 maintenance requirements. So if a student has a refusal and they ask us for a new CAS, we will ask to see the refusal notice. If the reason is because of maintenance, the student must provide us with valid maintenance documents, and then we will release the CAS. If the reason for the refusal was because of the outcome of a credibility interview, the student will be advised to submit an admin review to have that decision overturned. We don't issue a new CAS if the reason for a refusal is based on a credibility interview. So here is an example of what a CAS email statement may look like. I've highlighted the most important sections that will help the student to get the information they need to make their Tier 4 application, to complete their online application form. So the top arrow is a link to our sponsor license number. Students need that to make their application. And the second arrow is a link to the CAS number itself. All the other information that they require to make their application is included in the CAS statement, but a student does not need to print their CAS statement and send it with their visa application. So on this slide, the top arrow talks about how much money BU has a record that the student has already paid. So in this example, the course fees for the first year are $10,500 and the student has paid $2,000. Please ask your students to check the CAS statement really carefully when they receive it before they make their visa application. If they have paid more money than we have noted on their CAS, the students need to contact the international admissions team, provide evidence of how much they've paid, and then the CAS statement will be updated, and that must happen before they make their visa application. The second arrow is about the evidence used for offer. So this is where we will write the qualifications and the certificates that we have seen a copy of to offer the students a place on the course. So this is where the students will see which qualifications they have to submit with their visa application. So making their visa application, if they're applying from within the UK, and again, all of the sections in blue are links, you can click on them and it will take you to the correct page on the Home Office website. If they're applying from within the UK, they have the option of making a postal application, which is what most students do, where they submit their application online, then post their documents. That costs £448. A priority application, where they post their documents as well, but the decision comes back faster. That's $823. Or a premium in-person appointment, where they submit their application online, but then they book an appointment to go to the Home Office to have their biometric fingerprints taken and also submit documents, and they have the decision on the same day. That's £948. For all of these applications, students can only pay by credit or debit card. If they're applying from outside the UK, the fee that they pay will vary depending on which country the student is applying from. And if they are applying from outside of the UK, the link at the bottom is to the government website about the different application centres and where a student can apply based on where they're living in the world. So in addition, for making the visa application fee and needing to show the maintenance they have in their bank account or other financial documents, the students also have to pay the Immigration Health Surcharge, the IHS payment. This is done as part of the Tier 4 application online. So during the application, there are lots of sections. One of them will direct the students to the IHS payment portal. Based on their start and end date, it will calculate how much IHS fee they have to pay. They make that payment, it generates an IHS number, and then they can continue with the rest of their application. On this slide, you can see an example of, at the moment, with the current fees, how much a student needs to pay. So if they're an undergraduate course for 4 years, it's $675. Postgraduate 2-year course with a placement, $375. And if they're a postgraduate just doing 1 year of study with no placement, it's $225. So TB screening, tuberculosis screening. applicants from certain countries will require TB screening before they can enter the UK. They must have done the TB screening before they make their Tier 4 application. It'll be a requirement of the documents they provide as evidence of their Tier 4 of their TB screening. To find out if this applies to the students in your country, you can follow the link on this slide and it will give a list of all of the nationals that are required TB screening. If they've had TB screening in the past and they're not sure if they need to do it again for this new Tier 4 application, I would recommend that they have their TB screening done again. So hopefully the students will have an unconditional offer from us. They will receive a CAS, they will make their application and they will be successfully granted a visa. These are things that the students must consider after their visa is granted. They should check the visa very carefully to make sure there are no mistakes. If they find a mistake, either to details of their name, their date of birth, their working conditions, place of birth, they should try to get this corrected before they travel to the UK. The visa that is issued in their passport, if they're applying from their home country, from outside the UK, will be a sticker or vignette in their passport and it will be valid only for 30 days. This will be based on the student's start date of their course. The student must travel to the UK before the expiry date of those 30 days as noted on their visa. If they don't travel to the UK by the expiry date on this visa, they will need to apply again for a new 30-day visa. Students will also receive, when they're granted their visa, a letter, and this will confirm that the visa has been granted and where they will collect their biometric residence permit, their BRP document, which is the visa for the duration of their studies when they are in the UK. So the students must bring their passport, obviously, which has their 30-day visa in it, but also they must carry that letter in their hand luggage and bring it to the UK with them. It makes it more difficult to collect their BRP visa document if they don't have that letter with them in the UK. If your students are studying at the Bournemouth University International College, before they come to study a degree or master's with us at Bournemouth University, we work very closely with the International College and we run workshops for them to explain how they need to apply for their visa extension from their BUINTCOL course to their BU course, which documents they require and how to complete the online application form. Once they've received the results that they've successfully passed either their pathway or their pre-sessional course, we will have a one-to-one appointment with each student. We check their documents, we check their bank statements, and once we've checked that they meet the requirements, we will then have their CAS statement sent to them. If a student is choosing to make their application back in their home country, so for example the students finishing in May who are going home, or if there are some students that finish in the summer and then they decide to go home for a holiday before applying, they can scan and email their maintenance documents to us, and as soon as we see they meet the requirements, we'll send the CAS for them. We only issue a joint CAS for pre-sessional students who are studying pre-sessional and a degree course if the student already has an unconditional offer for their BU course before they start the pre-sessional course. We won't issue a joint CAS if the student has to pass the pre-sessional course to be allowed to study on their BU course. So there are some other questions that agents had wanted to be answered that don't come under making the Tier 4 application as an applicant. So I wanted just to cover those briefly. If a student is applying for a postgraduate Tier 4 visa and they're in the UK after they've studied an undergraduate course in the UK, either at BU or another institution, the International Student Support Team do offer a service that for either BU students moving from undergraduate to postgraduate or other students who've studied elsewhere in the UK who want to study postgraduate or PhD with us, we will support them in making their visa application from within the UK. We run visa information workshops twice a week on campus, and then once a student has attended those, even if they've not yet enrolled on their course at BU, we will also offer a one-to-one appointment where we will check their documents and check that they've completed their online application correctly. So we do support students in doing that. If a student changes their university choice after their application is made but before their course start. So there are two different things. If a student wants to study, has a visa to study at a different institution, and after their visa has been granted, they choose to change institution, they will need to have a new CAS from the new institution and make a new visa application and have that visa granted before they travel to the UK. If they have decided that so they can't study on, for example, a course, a BU course, if they have a visa that is tied to a different institution. When they're granted their visa, that visa ties them to do a specific course at a specific institution. If the student chooses after they've received their visa, but before they start their course, that they want to do a different course at BU, so for example, they were going to do business and now they want to do marketing, and it's before they've started the course, it is possible for the student to change their course option before they start their course. This doesn't affect their visa, although we need to report this to the Home Office. So a student can do that on one visa. Some agents asked about an emergency contact. I imagine that this is if a student has a visa refusal, what they should do, or if they think that they may not be able to arrive by the start of our course. The first place for students or agents to contact is the International Admissions Team, and I've got a link to their email address in a later slide. So if there are any queries about starting late or having a visa refusal, they are the first people to contact. And then the staff in the International Admissions Team will contact either the relevant faculty to see if it's possible to start later, or my team in the International Student Support Team to assess their visa refusal to see if we can assign them another CAS. The other question was about what type of visa they have during placement. So most of the BU courses offer a work placement for undergraduate and postgraduate students. The Tier 4 visa regulations allow that if a student is doing an official placement that is authorised by the university and is an assessed and integral part of the course, so it's a placement that we've authorised that they're doing because they're on their BU course, their Tier 4 student visa allows them to work full-time during their work placement. So if a student is on a 4-year undergraduate course and in their 3rd year of study they do a work placement, that will normally be a 40-week work placement, their visa allows them to work for that employer full-time, still on their Tier 4 student visa. The most important thing to tell your students is that they must follow the BU procedure to get that placement authorised, and there is a set process that will be explained to them when they're studying before they start their placement. That is what makes it an authorised and official BU work placement. I want to talk a little bit about the difference between immigration advice and immigration information. So within the UK, for us to give immigration advice to our students, we're regulated that we must have had external or relevant immigration training. So the international student advisors at BU have received the immigration training required to give advice to our international students about Tier 4 applications and complex cases, so if there's been a refusal or if their visa is due to expire very soon. So if you have any students that have immigration questions that are not answered within these slides, and the slides information we have on this webinar is immigration information, so which is general information for all students about how to apply for their visa and what the requirements are. If the student has a specific question that would need you to look at their circumstances and then interpret the immigration rules, please do direct them to the International Admissions Team. If they are not able to answer the question, then they will direct it to the International Student Support Team, and then my staff will give them the correct immigration advice. The immigration rules change frequently, and so it's really important, especially at the start of the student study, so in the summer before they come to us, that they receive the correct immigration advice so that they can successfully be granted their visa and come and study with us. So this is the email address for the International Admissions Team. If there are any questions about their application, they have a refusal, or they have immigration questions, please direct the students to this section of this email address initially. So here are some links to some other useful websites for you and for your students. So within the Bournemouth University web pages, the top link is about the service that we offer to students who are currently in the UK, how we support them with their visa applications. And the second section under Bournemouth University is the guidance on credibility interviews and the types of questions students will be asked. The second section is about the Home Office. So within the Home Office link, if a student wants to apply for their Tier 4 visa, the links to where they apply is on the first section, and the second one is the Tier 4 policy guidance. So this explains the requirements for students and institutions when a student is applying for a Tier 4 visa. And the last section is UKISA, the UK Council for International Student Affairs. This is a voluntary organisation that works very closely between the Home Office and institutions to give advice to institutions and students, and also to lobby to government when there need to be amendments to the immigration rules. Because UKISA is directed at supporting international students in the UK, there is a very good, very helpful international student section on their webpage, and it answers a lot of questions, for example, about bringing dependents, fee status, requirements for making their visa application, and any complicated cases. So if the students aren't able to reach anybody at the university, they can have a look at the UKISA guidance, and that will help them. Okay, so for those of you who are listening to this webinar on the recorded version, if you have any questions at all, please do contact us at international admissions at bournemouth.ac.uk. And we look forward to hearing from you and answering your questions, and also to welcoming your students to BU. And hope you have a lovely day. Thank you.